Rich Keefe. It's the DORK Podcast. Ryan Davey. It's the DORK Podcast. Hashtag. It's the hashtag DORK Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hashtag Dork. My name is Rich Keefe, joined as always by Davey Eyeballs. He is Roger Von Dodger. All hail the king of ginger ale. It's Ryan Davey. Davey, how are you?
Just splendid, Richard. Just
Great.
splendid. It's great to see you again.
It is a pleasure on my end.
Yeah.
It is all on this side of the wall. Let me tell you that. Just a reminder to folks listening to this podcast, whenever it happens to be, I assume in the first couple of days that it comes out. I could be wrong. But this weekend, Davey and I are going to be at Boston Fan Expo. We do not have a table. There's not going to be a big line for us. We're going to be actually out there with the people. They offered that to us. So like, hey, do you guys want to charge an outrageous rate for selfies and for autographs? And we said, no, not us.
Not us.
We want to be amongst the people.
We're as you say, real ham and eggers.
couple of Joey bag of donuts over here.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go out there. We're gonna have a nice time.
We're just real dudes. You know?
Good point.
Yes, and yes, by the way, if this is the first time you're seeing us in person, yes, I realize I think I should be taller too.
Like, oh, just like a disappointment.
Like, oh, yeah. Like Dalton.
Yeah.
Thought I'd be bigger. I'm not that big.
I always get a lot of like, man, you're way more handsome in person. And I'm always but I'm always like, is that kind of a shot? Like maybe when you see me on the YouTube or on Twitch, you're like, he's not that handsome. Then you see me in person, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Did you see there's a clip of like, is it Jimmy Kimmel? No, Jimmy Fallon talking to
Timberlake?
No, Jonah Hill. And he says like, you know, he's like, you smell great. Like you came out here and like you smell terrific. Like I didn't think you'd smell like that. And he looks at him, and I say this to people all the time now. He goes, I'm going to work really hard to not see that as a shot.
Yeah,
like not take that as a shot.
Kind of
like that's a shitty thing to say. Well, he's a dick, but whatever. Like,
don't you think it's kind of like a shitty thing to say? Like, or it's a shitty thing to say, but haven't you heard a lot of bad things about Jonah Hill? And I don't know if that's
yeah. No, like, I think he's by his own admission too. I think he just kind of like one of those
Dude, you mentioned Kimmel, and it made me think of Andy Milonakis.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Dude, I was listening to Three Loco the other day. You know, their fucking band. Do you remember Three Loco?
Mm-hmm.
So Three Loco is Dirt Nasty, Riff Raff, and Andy Milonakis. And Andy Milonakis has a line in there, which dare I say is the greatest line ever rapped. And I'll try to do my best to say.
Yeah, do your best.
He said, I eat my sushi with a sake bomb, and I eat the coochie of a soccer mom. Is that not poetry?
That is poetry. That is Kendrick Lamar level poetry. Also, remember he was like doing all this crazy shit, and then you found out what was your reaction when you found out when Andy Milonakis was doing like stuff on YouTube when it first came out that this kid's actually like 30?
Blew my mind.
Yeah, he's almost like 50 years old or so. Like he
probably is. He's older than us.
Oh yeah, significantly.
No, because he was doing stuff with Kimmel for a while, and the whole like gag was people thought he was like 10. And he was like 30 at the time.
He's 48 years old.
He's way older than us.
Yeah, he was
He's funny, man. Like he is funny.
But he did the whole thing like the Super Bowl is gay. Remember he was singing that song? And he was like, and you're like, oh, look at this kid's hilarious. And you're like, no, he's actually like 26.
Yeah. Yeah, but listen, that was his shtick.
Yeah.
I'm a big Simon Rex fan too. Dirt Nasty. Yeah. Dude, he's funny. So the reason I even went down that rabbit hole, so on our last Dork podcast on the Acolyte, Davey and I were also talking about the show Tires, and at the end of one of the Tires episodes, they play Nito.
They did, yeah.
It was just sort of like, you know, it was like the outro, so it wasn't like
the outro song, yeah,
referenced it or anything. But they played Nito. I'm like, I haven't heard Nito in a while. So then I ripped through the whole Three Loco album. It's great.
Do you know who would be great on Tires?
Oh,
Andy Milonakis.
And Simon Rex and Riff Raff.
He's a handsome guy. He's too handsome.
He is handsome, but you know what?
Simon Rex is a handsome guy. What?
Simon Rex could be a guy that like is either trying to buy the building
They bring him in. Yeah.
or like a guy who was like a rival to them that comes in and like he has like a tire place and you're like, Jesus Christ, look at him.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I listened to this whole podcast and it's kind of sad now, but Simon Rex, there was this whole thing where it was like, I don't know who did it, but they were taking like two celebrities that had never met each other and they were like, we're going to hit record and that's going to be a podcast. And it was Simon Rex and Angus Cloud, the guy who recently passed away from Euphoria.
Yeah.
Because they're both from the Bay Area. And so those two guys, just like, it was an hour of those two guys talking about the Bay Area, which I'm like, this shouldn't interest me, but it did. I'm like, it was pretty good. But Simon Rex needs more roles. He was also in that show with Amanda Bynes.
Yes.
Right? And Kelly Taylor from 90210.
Yes.
Whatever show that was.
I forget. Yeah.
Before we get to the topic du jour, which I'm legit super pumped to talk about, I also want to say I haven't watched it yet, but on Netflix currently right now is the Glenn Powell movie Hitman.
Yeah. So this is getting ridiculous reviews too.
97 on Roddy T's. I'm going to watch it.
I'm going to watch it as soon as we hang up the phone. I'm watching it.
Yeah. Talk about the It Man. Oh, so did you see this? Sorry to be all over the place, but that is the nature of the podcast.
That's the nature of this one. Yeah.
So we were talking about like algorithms on our Twitter. I don't know how this one popped up, but it was Glenn Powell doing an interview on what I assumed was a podcast. It was one other like young kid interviewing him, not a kid, but like a young guy interviewing him who I don't recognize. And it wasn't like from that Twitter account. It was like some random guy being like, I just gasped. And it's a 1.5-minute story of Glenn Powell telling a story. Would you like me to relay it to you?
Please.
So this is from Glenn Powell's perspective. He was like, his sister's friend. So we're already like 2 degrees removed, but Glenn Powell's sister's friend went out on a date and the guy was like really charming and whatever. She was having like a nice time on the date. He's like, do you want to go like back to my place? She was like, sure. But she was kind of feeling a little weird about it, but she's like, all right, like I'm going to go through. And the guy's
put on a Bob Dylan song. He's like, do you like this song? No.
It turned into that. And then that was over. That was the end of the story. No. So then he's like, do you want a massage? And she's like, sure. So she gets a massage from the guy, just sort of like shoulders and like whatever back. But I think it kind of.
We all know what happens there, how those things start.
Massage, and then all my weird. Yeah. Oh, here comes my weird. Yeah, we've all gotten a massage before.
Yeah.
So anyway, Glenn Powell's sister's friend gets this massage, but she's kind of sketched out by the guy at a certain point, and then gets out of there. Like is able to get out of there, gets the massage. I think it ends there, but she leaves.
Yeah.
Then she's like, Jesus Christ. Like she gets home the next day. She's so itchy. She's like so fucking itchy. She's like, what is this? She goes to the doctor. The doctor is like, oh, you have had some sort of like black market cream put on you that like starts to like take away your skin. And long story short, it was like to break down the skin. And so this guy was planning on eating her at some point. And so they were like, you need to tell us where this guy is. They did. The police show up at the guy's house. There was already like parts of 7 bodies in there.
Shut the fuck up. How did he let her leave then?
So I don't know. I don't know if it's a long game or maybe because like she said he was really charming. So it's not like he just like chloroformed her and then ate her. But like maybe he was like, maybe it's the long game and maybe you got to put that shit on there for a little bit or something. I don't know. But and maybe Glenn Powell's full of shit. Maybe we'll learn that down the road. I don't know.
Maybe we do. But that's a fascinating story. Where did this take place?
So I don't know. It was like one of those Twitter clips. So it was literally like the 90-second story. Then that was it. So I'm like, I didn't listen to the podcast. Maybe he has more. Maybe because the guy was just like, what the fuck? It's like, I mean, I would think how many people, if you gave that a bing, I would assume it would come up.
You would assume, yeah.
Guy like trying to like Hannibal.
Yeah. Did you bing it?
I didn't bing it. I watched it like right before we took off on this journey that is our podcast. By the way, thanks for tuning in to the hashtag Dork.
So who's the guy Glenn Powell talks about? Hitman.
Glenn Powell is if you were doing
the internet is going crazy for Glenn Powell's cannibal story.
Oh,
I found it.
Oh, you did? Oh no shit. So okay, so that was a It's out there. I thought I was the only one that knew about
So
it.
Glenn Powell's on the Therapus,
What an incredible name.
not therapist.
Therapus.
Therapus
Oh, that
podcast.
guy's
He told
killing
the same story about his sister's friend almost getting eaten by a cannibal. Therapus is better than Cumtown.
Cumtown? That was from last episode. I'm so pissed that we didn't name our podcast Cumtown.
We should have.
That
Like
would've
instead
been
of
so
doing
good.
infinity stones, be like, how many ropes? How many ropes do you get in this one?
I would have just, what a story that would have been.
Oh,
For people that don't know, we've done Dork for a while, and we did it pre me working at WEEI. But when I first got to WEEI, they wanted me to do a podcast. And so long story short, I ended up, rather than doing a sports one, I pitched them this. Can you imagine if they were just like, that's great. What's it called? It's Cumtown.
Cumtown.
It's actually called Cumtown.
It's got a little bit of a following now. Yeah.
And I am not willing to negotiate on the name. We're calling it Cumtown. They're like, all right, buddy.
You would have been that you've seen in Parks and Rec when John Ralphio gets the job at the accounting firm and doesn't make it a lap through the office. We just watch you right out.
He's good. That was a good character.
That was a good character.
All right. So anyway, that Glenn Powell story, maybe you heard it here first on #Dork. So that's pretty good. All right.
Fuck you, dickhead.
All right, Rye.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Joshua Adams. I'm CEO and founder of Cosplayer Nation. We did a documentary all about cosplaying across America from Maine to Seattle to Hawaii to Puerto Rico. We've won 3 awards. We're practically compass to the cosplay community, as well as we interviewed the guy who coined the phrase cosplay from the 80s, Tokenishi Takahashi.
Now, have you asked yourself
I have.
what you're going to do if you see that man again?
I'm going to sprint up to him.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're right behind me and we can interview him again, because
See,
he's the greatest person we've ever interviewed.
My new DJI mics,
Yeah.
250 feet. You can be away from me and still interview somebody. Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm super excited about that. I'll tell you that much.
I'll tell you this much about that much.
So a listener of ours a long time ago bumped into him somewhere.
Yes. And they got like a picture and send it to us. Yeah.
And it's like, did you? And like, I think he didn't even really realize that he was ever even on or anything like that. But I'm like, the guy's a legend.
He is a Dork podcast legend. If we put real people, because we put like celebrities in the Dork Hall of Fame, he might actually be the first normie to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Oh my God, great call. Next time we do a Dork Hall of Fame episode, we should Lifetime Achievement Award.
Joshua Adams.
We were talking about and thinking about doing a worldwide documentary, because there is cosplaying across the United States and the globe. Even though we live in Massachusetts and it's kind of a Puritan town, there are cosplayers that are in Germany, cosplayers that are in France, cosplayers in England. And, even in Germany, kids will dress up in cosplay and go to classes in cosplay.
Even in Germany.
Even Germany. We all know about Germany.
You know about Germany.
I'd love to go to Germany. That's on my list. That's probably
we should go a Dork abroad. We should vlog that and do Dork abroad.
You don't think we could do a better job than what's his name? Rick Steves?
Dude, we did Dork abroad. First place we're gonna go is Reykjavik, Iceland, because it's a nice, easy way.
Yep.
It's not a long plane ride.
They did it on CKY. We could do the same thing.
If Bam can do it, we can do it.
Bjork had one of the 100 best albums of all time, according to Apple Music.
But Army of Me is a fucking killer song. That's not on that album though, but
so
love that song.
Anyway.
Doing Junko Inoshima from Danganronpa.
She could be there too.
She could be there too. I would not know who she was because I wasn't at that. That was Rhode Island, right?
Trust me, you would know who she was. She was, and yes, it wasn't Rhode Island. That's true.
Yeah.
Ryan,
Y'all ready for bisque?
Topic du jour time?
I suppose so.
Well, I'm glad you asked. It's the topic of the day. And today is one of my all-time favorite films, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This won the poll. We're going to start to introduce this every so often where we're going to put 4 movies on a poll as a rewatch, movies that we never did a standalone on, whether they predated the podcast or we somehow just missed it along the way. And this one, it was very close, which means to me all 4 of those were worthy. Blade,
Yes.
Best in Show, and Seven. So those could also be done at some point. But
I was going to vote Spinal Tap. We've talked about Spinal Tap
Oh.
enough that we have to like break down the actual.
oh yeah, we didn't do a Spinal Tap episode, have we?
No.
Oh yeah, we could definitely do that. We don't even need to do a poll for that. We could just do
No.
that one coming
Yeah.
up. Yeah, well, because next week we'll do Fan Expo for one of the episodes, and then the second one is sort of TBD. All right, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out in 1988. It is 1 hour and 44 minutes. On Roddy T's, 96% by the critics, 85% by the audience. We begin, as we do with all of our TV and movie reviews, spoiler free. Ryan, did you like it?
You know what's crazy? I actually like it more now than I did as a kid. I hadn't watched it in years. I hadn't watched it in years. I watched it today, and I like it more now than I did as a kid.
That's pretty funny. There's definitely a lot of adult kind of themed jokes in there, and I think like a lot, in fact, to the point where young Cece Beans, who's 4, she's going to be 5 at the end of this month. As I was rewatching it, I was like, she'd like this. Then I'm like, actually, I don't think I want to explain half this stuff to her. I'm like, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show her this. At least right now. This famously is probably the movie that I have watched tipped to tail the most.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are a lot of movies that pop on TV, like Jurassic Park, and you watch a half hour of it and whatever, and that might be the movie you've seen the most. But I mean, movies that you, whether as a kid or as an adult, popped in the VHS or the DVD or hit play on stream and watched the movie in its entirety. I would say this is probably the movie I've seen the most.
In mine would be the aforementioned Spinal Tap.
Yeah, there you go. So we owe it. So you were doing this. So we,
Yep.
That's an easy volley right back to you. I do want to, we talked about critic scores. So 96% on Roddy T's. I did find one negative review for Who Framed Roger Rabbit by a woman named Dillis Powell.
She seems like an asshole.
100% an asshole. This is the snippet from her review. This is a real review from a real person. I clicked on it. She has other reviews. So this is legitimate. Quote, I find Who Framed Roger Rabbit a deplorable development in the possibilities of animation and a melancholy waste of the gifts of one of our most gifted actors. My God.
Shut up.
An asshole. Imagine having a conversation with Dillis Powell. If that's what she's landed on.
I have 3 words for her.
Get the fuck out of here!
Or fuck you, Dillis.
Take a shit.
Like
Dillis.
that is so bad.
She's such a Dillis too.
Such a Dillis. She's always been the biggest Dillis. I feel like this could be in the mix for greatest movie of all time. And I know that can be hyperbole. I know I go crazy at times. It's so insane. And you also got to think back to 1988 too.
Right.
Like for them to take animated characters and draw them into live action shit and have it like nearly perfect. Like there's a few times where you're like, all right, that kind of stands out. But for the most part, you're like, that's a cartoon character standing next to Bob Hoskins. They're having a conversation. They're in the same world. Like it is mind blowing to watch it. But I love the story. I think it's insanely rewatchable. Clearly, it's funny. There's like really good parts. The acting is great, and it's even better as an adult. Because as a kid, you're like, this is fun. As an adult, you're like, Bob Hoskins and Christopher Lloyd and all these other characters are talking to nothing, and they're like doing it.
This is what blew me away too, because I've seen like behind the scenes stuff with this, and I've seen over the years, I've seen these things. But as you know, I saw this movie when I was like 7 or 8, and then I watched it again now, and I confidently could not tell you how they did some of that shit. Like I don't know how they did it. And wild. It was and you think this is before computer animation. This is before any of this stuff. So they had to draw these things in, and I'm like, no green screens, like green screen technology, like wasn't really a thing.
I think
Not
there might be some-
really. It was.
yeah, no, it wasn't like a thing, but I think there was some green screen that he had to go in front of. But there's no like mocap or all that crap.
No.
Like that.
No,
yeah.
but you would like animate the whole thing behind it and just project it behind it. You could see it at some points. There was like didn't look right.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
There are some like jagged edges here, but at the time, like this blew my mind.
And it was crazy too, because I feel like, you know, Roger Rabbit is sort of like this clear, like, you know, almost like hero type of character.
Yeah.
Judge Doom is an all-time villain. I thought Eddie Valiant, as portrayed by Bob Hoskins, who I wasn't familiar with as a kid, I'm like, that's the guy from Roger Rabbit. He was like a great like actor.
And what's crazy too is this is a pretty good whodunit story. Is for all the wackiness in it, it's actually pretty clever.
Yes.
And this to me, and you said it could be one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't know about that, but what I can tell you is Bob Hoskins puts in probably one of the best physical performances by an actor I've ever seen. Like Andy Serkis level physicality in this, like the falls. I know there's a lot of stunt men and stuff, but like the stuff dancing and singing and like falling down and like getting hit with stuff that he's getting hit with things that don't exist.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is like,
he's in so many scenes with non-human actors.
Could you even put your head around like how hard that is to do, to pretend that someone's talking to you?
It's wild.
And you reacting to something that like nobody's saying.
It's crazy. And I think
that's wild.
I think there were scenes where like they would have like the guy who voiced Roger Rabbit like off screen.
But even then, like I'm talking to nothing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Like he's handcuffed to him for that whole scene. He's got the whole thing. He's like kicking the weasels. He's doing a whole like comedy act while he's trying to kill the weasels, and then he's like going after Doom, all that. Now, at least some of the Doom scenes, it's him and Lloyd. But then when Doom gets all crazy at the end, like it's not.
And I would say it's probably just as hard, maybe a little easier than doing a podcast over the phone for years.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, if nothing but professional.
That's right.
But Hoskins to me was like, well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned the whodunit part of it. Maybe this was the reason why I love a whodunit is because of this movie. But then to me, Hoskins is like a very layered character. Like he's not like an obvious good guy at first. He's not really an obvious bad guy either. But
doesn't like tunes.
Doesn't like tunes, but he used to like tunes, and then you find out why he didn't like tunes, and then they win him back. But it's a very layered thing, and I'll tell you, even as a kid, the moment, and so this will all be spoilers. Obviously, this movie came out forever ago. This is all spoilers, but the moment to me that won me over is because he's very prickly early on, right?
Yes.
He doesn't like Roger. He doesn't like tunes. He's a drinker, and he's just doing his thing. But when Marvin Acme is killed, and he gets brought to the scene of the crime, and he's looking around trying to figure out what's doing it. Some of the guys are making fun of him. And then Judge Doom is there, who you recognize is clearly like, this guy's fucking scary. And you're like, Eddie Valiant is like no nonsense. And he's kind of a hard ass. And he hits Judge Doom with the hand buzzer. And he introduces him. And you're like, ooh, I remember as a kid being like, this guy is on our side. Like he's fucking around a little bit. Like he's not nearly as scary as the other guy. He is, even though he puts up this like this tough exterior, he's gonna actually probably help Roger Rabbit out and not be a dickhead.
And and there's certain things that and there's certain things in the movie too that like I've picked up on now.
Yes,
that are way over my head, as a kid, and it's like stupid shit. Like so, he's talking to the waiter, and he's like watching like the dueling piano with Daffy and Donald Duck. And he's like, scotch on the rocks. And he looks at he's like, and I mean ice.
Yes.
As a kid, I thought what he was saying is like, I mean ice. He's meaning like, I want a lot of it. And I mean ice, right? But what he's saying is that like, no, he's going to come back and pour the whiskey on fucking rocks. Because
they put a rock in there. And he did. And then he gets his drink.
Yeah.
He takes a sip of it. Then he pulls a rock out of it. And he's like,
but like, I didn't know what on the rocks meant as a kid. I just thought,
Well, I didn't get a lot of it either because like there was definitely the part where when he shows up to the Acme crime scene and the one asshole other detective was like, didn't you used to be Eddie Valiant or did you change your name to Jack Daniels? And as a kid, you're like, okay, like why would he change his name to Jack Daniels?
Yeah,
like, that's fine. And he's drinking a ton.
In a kids movie.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely around alcohol.
Smoking. Was there smoking too in this movie?
There was a lot of smoking. In fact, he gets on the back of the bus or the train, I mean, and he's with kids. He gets off the train and he says goodbye. And they're like, bye, mister. And he goes, thanks for the smokes. So the kids gave him cigarettes.
And another thing I didn't pick up on in that scene too, and I'm glad you brought that up, is he's like, why don't you get a car, mister? And he's like, we live in Los Angeles. Like, we have the best public transit system in the world. Yeah. Dog shit public transit system. And the whole thing that Doom pitches.
Yeah.
No, but the whole thing that Doom pitches, the freeway.
Yeah.
Like, LA's notorious. They actually did it. They're like shitting on LA.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Like
because
the whole movie.
40s. It's supposed to be like the 40s.
40s or 50s. Yeah.
And yeah, like it's definitely like he's hyping up like how you can get around the city, and then Doom's gonna come in there and just take control of the whole thing and fuck it to the where it is now.
And meanwhile, LA is fucked. If you've ever been to LA, you recently.
I just recently was. Yeah, you can't drive anywhere. That's why we stayed in Anaheim.
And there's no public transportation.
No. Is also probably my first encounter with a chalk outline of a body.
Yeah.
Like Acme's dead, like as a kid. And then that became part of like I don't know if you want to call it pop culture or like the zeitgeist. Every movie and show that had like a dead body had like a chalk outline. So then you sort of like you're like, hey, they must outline the body afterwards.
And it turns out they don't do that. They just leave the body there and take pictures of it.
Yeah.
Well, shit. What was I going to say?
So in that same scene, by the way, now this has been. I think there's two sides to this. Not everybody sees it this way, but you remember when the stretcher kind of falls and then it knocks open like a case of shoes.
Yeah.
And then obviously the one shoe gets dipped. And as a kid, that was like a terrifying moment. But there's a pair of boots that walk like Hitler. Like they go up, up, down. Now, I think some people might just see it that way. I don't know if that was the intention. But if you go back and watch it, there's a lot of shoes, sneakers. Then there's a pair of boots. And it looks like it's doing like a march. But I don't know.
Oh, there could be just army boots that are doing that. You know, like I think people read a little too much into this sometimes. But I want to talk about one of the things because this movie exploded. Like this movie was the biggest thing that year. If I recall,
probably
people were talking about this movie a lot. And when I was watching this, it reminded me of the fact. So like you had all Warner Brothers and Disney cartoon characters in the same movie.
Yes, I don't think it's ever happened.
It's never happened, and it hasn't happened since. And because both of those things were not doing well. Like if you remember correct, like there was like all this stuff, like this came out. So this was one of the movies that is credited with saving Disney. Because they had a run of like, especially animated, they had a run of like dog shit movies. Like I'm talking like Oliver and Company, which is like everything. I love that movie. It's not that good. And then they started doing like live action, like Flight of the Navigator, Journey of Natty Gann. Remember they doing like all those movies?
Yeah, because this is pre Beauty and the Beast, Lion King.
Yes, there's a movie called The Black Cauldron, which I actually like. It came out in like 85, 86. That almost sunk Disney animation. The movie bombed so bad that it almost sunk. And then this movie, and then the next year, The Little Mermaid came out.
Oh,
and those are the two movies that saved Disney.
Well, there was also a big to do because both characters were being used. I think it was Disney. No, it may have been Warner. No, I think it was Disney. That was like, all right, you can use our characters in the movie with Warner, but they need to have the same screen time. Yeah. Therefore, you get the Donald Duck, Daffy Duck dueling pianos, so they're on there together. You get the Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny scene where they're falling from the building with Eddie Valiant, so they're on there together. Even at the very end, you'll notice the very end of the movie, Porky Pig gives like his goodbye, but then like Tinkerbell swoops in.
Yes.
So it's like not to be outdone. Like here's Tinkerbell also doing like a little like.
And every time, now you mentioned it, like every time you see like an iconic character, they're with either in a group or they're with someone else.
And then I was thinking back to that. I'm like, oh, usually they're at the same. And then I'm like, well, then there was the scene with Yosemite Sam. Remember when he gets blasted out of Toontown and he lands? He's like sarsaparilla, and he's like, But then there was also the scene of just Dumbo when Eddie Valiant
before
was
that.
scared. So like, I think
they were in Maroon's office and like, he's on loan from Disney, and then they walk out and Yosemite Sam comes over the building.
All right. So speaking of Maroon's office, this is one of the Who Framed Roger Rabbit theories. And this is not one that I picked up on as a kid at all, but this is one that is out there. So in his office, there's a poster of the Pistol Packin' Possum, which is a fucking cool little logo, by the way. Pistol Packin' Possum. Some out there believe that Judge Doom is actually the Pistol Packin' Possum. That's his human form. And at the very end, when Eddie Valiant is in the office with R.K. Maroon and he's doing this whole thing, I remember the line stood out to me as a kid when he's like, this is a story about greed, sex, and murder. And then he puts his tie in the thing and he's like choking him. But then that long pistol comes into the scene and then turns around and it does it over the poster for the Pistol Packin' Possum. It's the same pistol.
Because he says he's a tune, but he never says who he was.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And he kind of does look like a possum a little bit.
He kind of does.
Yeah.
So there's been other stories. I think there's a book. There's also been written sequels that have never obviously made the light of day. But in some of this stuff, Judge Doom's character, who, as we know in this movie, killed Eddie Valiant's brother.
And there was a great, and like I remember this too as a kid. What's her name? Dolores delivers the line where she's like, yeah,
right.
His brother was killed by a tune. And then she goes just like this. She goes, dropped a piano on him. Which, like, as a kid, I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And now as an adult, I'm like, that's so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
it's like a tune way to kill someone.
Ridiculous.
Right. Dropped a fucking piano on his head. Like,
he actually got a fucking piano dropped on him. Like, that's a fucking funny line. So Doom's guys are weasels, right?
Yeah, and originally
they look like the Pistol Packin' Possum.
They do kind of look a lot like the Pistol Packin' Possum. There were supposed to be 7
but that's the gun.
That is the gun.
If you look at the poster, that's the gun.
Yeah. You're looking at it now.
Yeah.
I should pull that up. Actually, I could probably pull that up. But so there was going to be 7 weasels, like to go like 7 dwarfs, but then they went to 5. They don't name the weasels in this movie, but there's been other stuff since where they all have names or whatever. Do you have a favorite weasel and a least favorite weasel?
I like the Zoot Suit. I don't like the dumb one.
Same. Yeah, same.
Yeah, but I like the leader of the crew there with this little Zoot Suit.
I like the leader. I like the guy in the green. I think he's good. Yeah, I don't like the dumb one. I don't think you need the dumb one. No, what was I going to say about Eddie Valiant? Oh, so Dolores, I think, is an incredible actress. I was a big fan of Dolores always. They show a clip where she went on vacation with Eddie and Teddy Valiant. Yeah. It's Eddie and Teddy Valiant.
Yeah.
Do we think she?
I think she had a thing with Teddy.
Okay.
Both of them? No, they're not. I don't think the Valiant brothers are Eskimo brothers.
I think they are.
You think they are?
Well, you think she had a thing with Teddy. I feel like the way the movie ends, like she's definitely having something with Eddie. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, because he's the brother who's he's the live one.
I mean that'd be really fucked if they went the other route. I think, but something's up there. So here you go. If you're watching on the Twitch stream, here's the Pistol Packin' Possum, and you'll notice that is very clearly the gun that R.K. Maroon is killed with, and Jessica Rabbit. Like you were saying, it's a good whodunit because they kind of. I mean, the movie's called Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but then at one point, Jessica Rabbit is being like framed or set up to look like a villain. But this
playing patty cake with Acme,
which is also kind of funny because like as a kid,
you think it's like a euphemism. You're like, yeah, why is that a big deal?
Right? Like, you're just playing patty cake. You don't really get it. But yeah, I'm kind of in on this Pistol Packin' Possum theory.
I am too.
Because that's what's so cool about this world is like Roger Rabbit is Roger Rabbit from the cartoons and Bugs Bunny from the cartoons, but then they also like live in the world.
Yeah.
So like this pistol packing possum is like a fucking guy.
He's out there.
He's out there, and then he turns into Judge Doom, and Cloverleaf is the backer, and they're gonna buy up Toontown. Let's see what else do I got in here. Yeah, so basically it says how Valiant and Valiant is was Eddie and Teddy. Their dad was an actual clown. Then they joined the LAPD. Then they became PIs. And what I also loved is in that scene where kind of sad before you realize Roger's in there and Eddie's just kind of like,
you see like Teddy's desk.
Yeah, you see Teddy's desk. Eddie's such a booze bag, so it's just kind of like a sad kind of walk through. But they give you these newspaper clips, and one of them says they returned Donald Duck's nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, who were kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a movie, isn't it? Huey, Dewey, Louie getting kidnapped.
Yeah, but there was another one that was like they cleared Goofy of spy charges.
Yes, hilarious.
But one of the things that's incredible, so in this scene,
movies right there.
Roger goes to sit in Teddy's chair,
mm-hmm.
and he yells at him, "Don't sit in that chair!" And he takes his hand away, and you can see fingerprints.
So cool, yeah, because it's all dusty, and so like
it's
left over.
And when he pulls his hand away, like, how do they do that?
It's insane. Yeah. So I was also reading, that scene when they're hiding them in Dolores's bar, and they keep bopping into like the overhead like light.
Yeah.
I guess they kept making like the shadows like they're like legit, so for like where like Roger would be in there, and they're like that's now even referred to now in the business. There's like a name for it, but basically like referencing that being like fucking, I know not everybody watching is going to notice it, but let's make it as good as we can, kind of thing.
Right.
That scene was pretty crazy, like all the restaurant scenes.
But I love shit like that. I was just watching, this is a bit of a side street, but like so things like that. So like I was watching this clip the other day, and there's like stuff in Red Dead that people are just starting to find out again.
That's cool. Yeah.
Like 5 years later. So like, did you know that if you're like wearing a white shirt and it has blood on it, if you go in the water, not only will it come off slowly, but the blood you can see the blood in the water.
That's insane.
Like how do you fucking, someone had and like oh, these fucking games take so long to do. Like that's why. Like because they put shit like that in the game. Like putting stuff like that, those small touches make such a huge difference.
That's crazy. I guess I don't know if it was going to be if it was in the book or if it was revealed in a sequel or a different version of the script, but I read that they were going to say Judge Doom was the one responsible for killing Bambi's mom. That was going to be sort of like a thing.
But then they would have had to mention a Warner Brothers character.
They would have, although she was in at the end. Bambi. So at the end, it's like chaos. Yeah. That final scene. So that's obviously equal billing.
It's a bunch. Yeah, it's a bunch of.
But there's a million, and even like I was just trying to keep track of some of the characters as I was watching it, like again. But Dumbo, you get early. You get you get the brooms from Fantasia, and they mention Fantasia. Daffy and Donald Duck. Betty Boop, who's one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm. By the way, so the voice of Betty Boop, if you want to know who that is, that's Aunt Edna from not Aunt Edna, Christmas Vacation. The old lady who brings the Jello mold in her cat.
Awesome. That's
the voice of Betty Boop.
I guess there's one cut of the movie, I think, where her breasts were exposed.
Hey now.
Yeah. Yosemite Sam, Droopy. Good Droopy. Tweety Bird, Mickey and Bugs, Pinocchio, Sylvester the Cat, Woody the Woodpecker, Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, Bambi, Speedy Gonzales, Goofy, Pluto, Dopey, Foghorn Leghorn.
Did you get any Felix the Cat?
I bet he was in there.
I bet he was, but he's not either of the two, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I think he might have been like it just as a part of Toontown.
Yeah,
like that whole thing. Let's see what else did I have in here. I wonder if Doom was one of the guys that tried to kidnap Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Actually, you could have outed him for that.
Very well could be.
No, but this really was just such a landmark movie. Jessica Rabbit is obviously very, very famous. It's funny. I guess there's been a lot of different interviews with Robert Zemeckis, who directed this movie, about a potential sequel. And I guess there's been like a couple different scripts written. And a couple times when he's been asked about it, he's just like, Disney doesn't like Jessica Rabbit.
No.
Like they are not fans of Jessica Rabbit, and he doesn't think Disney is gonna want to do it. He says the script is good. I guess there was one script, no bullshit. This is what I read on the internet, so it's got to be real. And it was only going to take place a couple of years after this movie, so sort of during World War II, and it was going to involve the Nazis for real, and they were going to like kidnap Jessica Rabbit and like make her do like propaganda for them.
Like oh my god,
I know, it's like a whole thing.
that's a little too heavy.
That's too much. That's way too much.
Too
And I
much.
guess Spielberg, I guess he was going to be involved in it too. And then he was like, no, because like he was just doing Schindler's List at this time. So he's like, I can't do that.
Right.
But then there was also talk about them doing like a prequel instead and having it be more about how Roger and Jessica met and like that.
Yeah, because you can't have Eddie Valiant in it anymore because Bob Hoskins no longer with us, sadly.
Yeah, that sucked. He died
A while ago.
10 years ago, at least 10 years
Yeah.
ago, maybe more.
Let's see.
He was so good. I mean, he was incredible in this.
I'm trying to think. So Robert Zemeckis,
Yeah.
did the TV. So he went from. Look at this run.
Yeah, he's incredible.
So he went starting in '84. He did like some smaller stuff, and then Romancing the Stone, fucking awesome.
Mhm.
Back to the Future,
Mhm.
Amazing Stories, the movie and the TV series. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Back to the Future 2 and 3. Death Becomes Her, awesome movie.
Oh, I like Death Becomes Her. Yeah.
And then Forrest Gump, and then he directed a Tales from the Crypt, and then like Castaway, Beowulf, Polar Express. Like he did all like
Yeah.
what a run this guy's had.
And then like everything he's done since, I feel like during his press runs, somebody asked him about Roger Rabbit, and he's always like, hey, there's like a script out there that's good, but like I don't think it's gonna happen. But like he's like, I don't think he's saying it's never gonna happen, but it just feels like I'll say as the biggest Roger Rabbit fan that I know, I don't think I want a sequel.
No.
It doesn't need one. It's kind of the perfect movie in my mind. I think you have a great villain. I don't need any more. Like if you want to do a comic book, and maybe even there was like stories, fine. Remember there was a video game.
Oh, that's what Josh just said. He said, give us a video game where you play as Eddie Valiant. There is one. It's for the NES. It's Dong Water. The game stinks.
I remember playing it. It's
a lot of work just to get Benny the Cab.
Yeah.
Just to get you from point A to point B.
Dude, Benny the Cab's great character.
Major character in this movie.
There's a Who Framed Roger Rabbit ride at Disneyland
Mhm.
that I went on, had to go on. It kind of like spins around, and basically you're like in the cab and people are chasing you and you're going all around.
Right.
That's cool. It's cool.
What if pitch this to you, right?
All right. Go ahead.
Roger Rabbit sequel. It's the son of Dolores and Eddie Valiant. He has reluctantly taken up the family business, but it's the 60s and he's gotten into like psychedelic drugs.
Okay.
He starts thinking, he sees Roger comes and tries to help him. He doesn't think he's real. And so all the freeway in LA has been built. So like the Toontown's no more. Right. So Roger comes to him, tries to help him out, or tries to like gives him a case and says like I need you to, I'm going to help you and you're going to help me. But he doesn't think he's real. What do you think of that? Is that something?
Yeah.
If you want to go down that road.
That is. I love that. Yeah, he doesn't like. He's like, I'm fucking. This stuff is really good.
Up.
If I'm seeing fucking anime, I'm seeing cartoon bunnies.
Yeah,
like no, there's some. I love that idea. If you want to go like slightly dark, right? Because a lot of the fans of this movie are going to be older. So you show it to them, and you're like, hey, things are so fucked. Like we think the tunes are done, and you're like, no, dude. Like we've been like hiding out somewhere, and there's a certain amount of them somewhere.
And you do it in the time of like, not to like draw this parallel, but like the civil rights movement. And you're just like, yeah, like we understand, like we were run out of town. We're all like, we have to hide. Like we get this, like set it against that, really bring it around,
There's something there.
There's a movie here.
There's something there.
Yeah.
There's only been a few movies since Roger Rabbit that tried to go down the animated character
Oh yeah.
real world character. And
The only movie I ever walked out on.
Cool World.
Cool World.
Cool World was not good.
Not good.
Space Jam obviously was kind of what it was. Oh, I got a couple of almost casted. Do you want a couple almost casted?
There's one big one that I know of.
So the Eddie Valiant was almost not almost. They originally wanted Bill Murray.
Yes.
And I guess they couldn't get a hold of him as
They
the
couldn't get a hold of
story
it.
goes.
Yeah, as this, and then their other pick, I heard, person who read the script and was like, no, was Eddie Murphy.
Man, what a different movie. I'm so glad it was Bob Hoskins.
So am I. But like Eddie Murphy, Eddie Murphy wound up doing like Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, right.
Because he said at the same time they gave him the script for Ghostbusters and this. And he was like, no, he didn't want to do Ghostbusters because he wanted to do his own thing.
He should have done Ghostbusters.
We did Beverly Hills Cop, which was awesome. Instead of those two.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bill Murray, I guess, when he found out that they
wanted 48 hours. I forget which one it was, but yeah.
Yeah. But then it's funny because then Bill Murray obviously is in Space Jam, so he does the same kind of acting. But yeah, he obviously wanted to be in this. But as much as I like Bill Murray, I'm so glad it was Bob Hoskins instead. Judge Doom, though, which was played perfectly by Christopher Lloyd, I guess as the story goes, Tim Curry. From Clue and from Rocky Horror Picture Show,
legend.
I guess he did it, and they said you're doing it too scary. Like he did it so fucking overboard that they were like, we can't have you.
Well, I'm glad you said that because there are still things in this movie, like when he reveals himself to be the tune that killed Eddie's brother, and his voice starts going up, and he's got the crazy eyes. That's still pretty fucking scary.
It's real scary. Yeah. I was scared of a lot of stuff as a kid too. I somehow was able to watch this, but I was definitely scared of that. I didn't like when he dropped the little slipper in the fucking dip.
No, so the first time we tried to watch this with my older daughter, I think she was like 5 or 6, and she was out. She's like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
I don't blame her. That was definitely scary. That'd be the part where I'd be like, I'm gonna go get a snack. I'm gonna go to the kitchen.
Hard to watch.
Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah.
John Cleese was interested in it, but they were like, you're kind of hilarious. Like, we don't want it to be that funny. The guy from Monty Python. Christopher Lee turned it down.
He would have been scary too.
Christopher Lee would have been really good.
Did you ever hear that story about him in Lord of the Rings?
Maybe. Which one?
He's talking about like when he's the wizard, he gets stabbed. And Peter oh, you haven't heard the story? This is great.
Well, no, tell it anyway. Maybe not.
So Christopher Lee was in like this SAS. He was like a special forces person. And he's talking to, so they keep doing this take of like Saruman getting stabbed. And he keeps going, like he keeps like breathing in. And Peter Jackson is like, no, I want you to scream when you get stabbed. And he does it. And like, he keeps trying to get him to scream. And then finally Christopher Lee was like, when you stab somebody in the back, they don't scream. It takes the wind out of you. You actually can't scream. And it dawned on Peter Jackson that this guy's actually fucking stabbed or seen someone get stabbed in the back.
Correct.
And so like that's in the movie. He's like, it's like he like breathes in because
I remember that. Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, you actually can't scream when you get stabbed in the back.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Like what a badass.
What a badass.
Actually, sir.
No, Christopher Lee's as kick-ass a guy. Like when Christopher Lee's in something, you're like, oh shit. Like he was in a bunch of like old school horror movies with like Vincent Price. He played Dracula. He was a Dracula. He was literally Dracula a lot of times. All right, how about all of these people also, according to the internet, were considered to play Judge Doom? Robin Williams.
That could have been good.
I think so too. Sting. John Lithgow.
That could have been good.
Willem Dafoe.
Oh my god.
John Malkovich.
That would have been good too.
Gabrielle Byrne. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No.
Which would have just taken you out of the movie. Tim Robbins.
I'm going to get the dip.
Tim Robbins. Christopher Walken.
That would have been
88.
Bananas.
That would have been nuts. Michael Keaton.
That would have been good too.
Alec Baldwin. Richard Gere,
Nah.
Dustin Hoffman, Robert De
short.
Niro and Al Pacino,
Oh my god.
Ron Perlman, Michael Richards
That would have been good.
would have been hilarious, and Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, that would have been weird too.
Goldblum would have been good. I think Lloyd was a great call though. Like Hoskins was perfect, and I think Lloyd was also probably perfect.
They maximized what this movie was going to be.
Yeah. And then
You know my favorite Jeff Goldblum's. You know how they have these weird Bill Murray stories, like you told, like he just like wouldn't show up. Like I heard you hear stories like they opened this driving range and they like kept reaching out to his people and they're like, no. And then on like the grand opening of the thing, he just showed up.
Makes sense. Yeah.
There's this great Jeff Goldblum story. I forget who told it, but like when you get introduced to him, he's like, "Oh, Jeff, this is my friend Rich." His response to everybody, "Oh my God, of course you are." Like he knows who you, and then you hear him say it. Then like the person felt like, "Oh my God, like Jeff Goldblum knows who I am."
Yeah.
And then he did it like within earshot, like with someone else. Like that's what he says when "Of course you are."
Of course.
Yeah, of course you are.
He seems like a pretty
He does. He's a good hang.
It does. He seems like that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, that's it, man. I mean, I love the movie. It's one of my favorites. Well, I'm going 6 out of 6. What would your score be for?
I went 6 out of 6. I would have given it a 5 had I not rewatched it.
Got it.
This movie's great.
Yeah, it is. All right, that'll do it for us. Let us know what you guys thought of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Hit us up at Dork Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and you can email us anytime, dorkpodcast@gmail.com. Next week, Fan Expo. Oh, shit. Actually, did we start our House of the Dragon Sunday nights?
Yeah.
Is that next
Oh,
week?
the Bear.
No. The Bear's the end of the month.
I thought the Bear was like the 13th.
Oh, I thought that was the 27th.
Oh, it's fine. Either one. It doesn't matter.
I think The Boys is coming out.
Okay.
We're doing Dem Thrones Boys. I think that's coming
Dem Thrones Boys. That's back. We back, baby.
All right.
So we moving to Mondays?
Well, we got to do Dem Thrones Boys on.
Oh, the right after. Yeah.
And then probably maybe we'll do one episode Sunday, one episode Monday, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll keep everybody posted on Twitter, and I'll try to do it on Instagram as well. And then usually once I know, I'll also schedule them on YouTube, so you can always go to the YouTube page, and hopefully it'll say what's upcoming and what the time is. But
yeah,
very good. And then we'll try to keep it pretty constant wherever you get your podcast, whether it be Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app, wherever it might be. But Ryan, promise me a million times over you'll never do another rule.
Yeah, no, man, I'm not going to promise you that.